Welcome to B'nai Jacob 101, your Cram session and guide to being a part of our congregation. Today in 10 minutes, I want to get you ready for the Passover Seder. Really, if you've never experienced a Seder, my advice is to join us for our annual community Seder. We have lots of room. You'll experience what a Seder is all about, what it looks like, what the objects on the table are for. You'll hear singing and discover how we celebrate this important festival. And we have a great meal to boot. But this video is really for those who have been to a traditional Seder, maybe fumbled through the text and the rituals, and want to find a short and simple way to deliver the main themes of this holiday to a hungry group of folks that maybe are more interested in the main course. A few years back, a congregant came up to me and asked if I could show him how to run a traditional Seder. He wanted to go through the steps, focus on the narrative found in the Haggadah, emphasize what's important and what must be said. The person jotted down everything and was genuinely excited about learning the Haggadah. He couldn't wait for the Seder. The following week I saw him and asked, "Well, how did it go? Did you wow everybody?" And he said, "Well, to be honest, no, I didn't. You see, I was excited about the material and I had so much I wanted to discuss and so many commentaries to share. Yet the guests arrived late. The kids got restless. The food was ready and needed to be served. I found I didn't have the audience for all the material I had planned. They all kept saying, 'Hurry up.'" He had a rabbi's length Seder in a very non-rabbi type home. So I asked him how much time did it take before he lost everyone. And he told me, 10 minutes. At that point I realized this situation is not much different than most homes. The Seder is indeed a beautiful ceremony. And there is so much to say, to sing, and discover before and after dinner. But it's not always possible. Other than going through a few of the objects and maybe a paragraph or two from the Haggadah, the book we use during the Seder, it's kind of hard to get much in before the guests start to get restless. Soon you find yourself rushing and skipping the rest, some of the most important stuff. That's a shame. Now, not that a Seder should be short, but like any good speaker, you got to know your audience. And so if you have a tough crowd coming to your home for Seder this year who just want to eat, this B'nai Jacob 101 video is for you. It will help convey the powerful ideas behind the Seder. And I got to thank the great Rabban Gamliel. He's going to help me get you out of there and into the dinner in less than 10 minutes. Rabban Gamliel, an actual section of the Haggadah, right before the meal, he says, Rabban Gamliel used to say, "Whoever does not explain the following three symbols on Passover has not fulfilled his duty." And they are Pesach, the Passover offering, matzah, the unleavened bread, and maror, the bitter herbs. Everything else, from the salt water to the charoset, from the four questions to the dayenu, are all nice things to do, but are all extraneous. You don't really have to do all those if you're pressed for time. Pesach, matzah, and maror, the paschal lamb, the unleavened bread, and the bitter herbs, are the key to the night, the raison d'etre for the evening, if you will. Explain these well, and you've fulfilled the commandment of celebrating Passover. You will have given your guests and family reason for being at the Seder, and I think I can get you out of there in 10 minutes. So if you're always pressed for time conducting your Seder, pay close attention. Rabban Gamliel says tersely that you have the paschal lamb, the shank bone, on the table to remind us of how God protected us. In Egypt, we slaughtered a lamb, we took the animal's blood, we smeared it on the doorpost, and watched as God passed over our homes on that night and spared us from the 10th plague. Rabban Gamliel is saying you've got to talk about the paschal lamb because it emphasizes an important point that sadly many Jews have lost along the way. God loves us. It is depressing to me that such a statement still raises eyebrows in synagogues and temples across the country. God loves us sounds so Christian, Jews will tell me. But actually, it's very Jewish. Jews have just gotten away from it. We say those words all the time. We say in our evening service, Ahavat Olam, with everlasting love, you have loved your people Israel. In the morning, right before the Shema, the declaration of Jewish faith, we say, Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanu, with great love, you have loved us. God cares for us, God loves us, and that's one of the key ideas we are told we must convey on Pesach. Remember how God loves us, cares for us, and protects us. Here's what I love to say on Passover night. If Christianity can correctly be summarized as God so loved the world that he gave us his only begotten Son, and through him we attain everlasting life, then Judaism should be summarized as God so loved the world that he took his people out of the land of Egypt, gave us the Torah to share with the world, and through its teachings will redeem the world. That's what the Paschal offering reminds us of, the great love of God, that God protected us and loved us in Egypt. That's a very Jewish concept, and one of the ideas that must be emphasized at the Seder, as summarized by Rabban Gamliel. Now that should take you 3 minutes. Rabban Gamliel also says we should raise the matzah, the unleavened bread, to remind everyone of how we left Egypt in haste, as per God's commands. We didn't tarry. He told us that we were to leave the next morning, and we left as commanded, not having time to let our bread rise, putting our trust in God that he would provide for us. Pesach is the celebration of a second great truth of Judaism, according to Rabban Gamliel. He not only loves us, but we are to love God and place our trust in him. We do that by being faithful to his commandments. Matzah represents the willingness of the Jewish people to be faithful to God's teachings and follow his ways. Passover Day in Egypt became the first of a series of moments that reminded us of the reciprocal nature of our relationship with God. He loves us, and we love him. And we show that affection for him by doing his mitzvot, his commandments. Again, here's where many Jews have dropped the ball again. Not just those who do not keep the Torah, but those that do not know why they perform the commandments that we follow. The reason for the dietary laws in our faith, kashrut, the chagim, the festivals, and the religious acts of faith and devotion that we perform each day, is for no other reason than a love of God. I love the Shabbat, the Sabbath, but I keep the Shabbat to fulfill the desires of my Creator. He asked me to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and I do it for him for the same reason I will do something for my parents, for my wife, and my children. I love them, and I bend my will toward them, and I do it as someone in love. And that's what the matzah symbolizes. It reminds us that the Jewish people so loved God, and we followed him in his teachings, and we left Egypt as commanded in haste. Now give yourself another 3 minutes for that. You've conveyed the second major theme of Pesach and the Seder night. The matzah is symbolic of our love for God. Now that just gives you more than enough time to point to the bitter herb and remind your guests of the bitterness of Egyptian bondage, how hard it was to be a Jew in Egypt and how we were oppressed. You cannot help but look at the Haggadah and not see centuries of hatred the Jews have endured. From the chilling statement found in the Haggadah, in every generation, B'chol dor vador, chayav adam lerot, we always should remember that there have been those who have sought to destroy us. To the very last song of the Haggadah, the Haggadah, which is a simple poem describing each of the major nations that have tried to annihilate us. Passover is an annual reminder of how we have faced difficulties and persecution everywhere we have been because we have been Jews. Even in the security and the kindness we find in this wonderful country, it's still not simple being a Jew as a minority. The bitter herb reminds us of the bitterness that we face because of who we are and what we stand for as Jews. We have down through the centuries refused to bend the knee to a haughty tyrant. We answer to the King of Kings. We have rejected the words of those who said God has given us a new teaching, or a new covenant, or a new prophet to follow. We have continued to say to the world that to be a Jew is to be like our ancestor Abraham, the Hebrew, the Ivri, which means the opposite one. We are the Hebrews, the ones who walk the world, but like the first Ivri, march to our own drummer. And because of that somewhat defiant attitude, we have been hated, continue to be hated, and will continue, unfortunately, to be hated. On Passover, we remind ourselves that this relationship with God and this covenant has been marked by bitterness at times. However, on Passover, we dip the bitter herb in the sweet concoction of apples and cinnamon and wine called the charoset. And when we eat it, we remember that the bitterness has also been touched by the sweetness of our devotion to our faith, knowing that our lives as a people have meaning and significance. God loves us, we love God, and this heritage gives us meaning and purpose. Pesach, matzah, and mar, the bitter herb. There. I think I did that with a minute to spare. In less than 10 minutes, you will have fulfilled the commandment of the Seder night. You have also created good food for thought, I think, for an evening of great discussion and conversation about our faith. What does Passover try to convey? That God loves us and cares for us, that we love Him and are to be faithful to His commandments, and that we are a people who have faced enormous hatred for our beliefs, but we continue to survive and continue to live with meaning and purpose. Seder should be a time of singing, celebrating, and studying. It should be a time to remind ourselves of the incredible rituals and rich heritage of our people. That's why I invite you to come to our synagogue community Seder. More power to you if you want to try to have a traditional one at your home. But I'll tell you, if you have a bunch of people that have not just 4 questions, but actually only have 1 question, when do we eat? You got to be creative. And I hope I've shown you how it can be done in less than 10 minutes. Given the right table companions, however, these ideas can whet people's appetite for a real dialogue that will not only allow for discussion of what it means to be a Jew, but how we are all capable of drawing near to the Almighty, to God. May we all be blessed with a Chag Kosher V'Sameach, a joyous and meaningful Seder. See you next time.